The night was thick with fog, the kind that makes the trees seem like shadows themselves. My flashlight barely cut through the mist, and each step on the mountain trail echoed louder than it should have, swallowed almost instantly by the heavy silence. I thought I was alone, but the smell of wet earth and decaying leaves carried something else with it. Something moving just beyond my sight. Somewhere above, a pale light flickered in rhythm, like a signal, and the wind whispered to the pines, almost like voices. My breath felt heavy in my chest, each inhale sharper than the last. That's when I saw it. The fog drifts low, crawling along the mountain trail. It clings to my legs, damp and quiet. The trees loom like silent sentinels. A flicker catches my eye. Between the pines, pale and trembling. I pause, breath held. When I step closer, it disappears. Just a ripple of shadows and a soft rustle of leaves. The air hums in the emptiness. I feel it then, a presence moving just beyond sight. Patient, waiting. My boots press into wet soil. Each step makes the silence heavier. The fog swirls, carrying the faint tang of pine and earth. The light flickers again, this time closer. It dances between the trunks, quick, teasing. I try to follow, slow and careful. The wind whispers, curling around my ears, cold against my skin. Something shifts behind me, a weight in the shadow. The path narrows. Branches scrape my arms, leaving thin lines of chill. I can't tell if it's ahead or behind. A soft rustling rises. I freeze, chest tightening. The fog thickens, swallowing shapes, swallowing sound. It comes in glimpses. A flicker, then gone. A pale glow that seems to breathe with the wind. I stop moving. The earth beneath me soft, damp, pressing up against my boots. The light hovers, just out of reach. I sense it circling. No footsteps, yet I feel a weight shift in the mist. Eyes that never blink. Watching. Patient. The wind cuts through the trees, sharp. Leaves shiver, 1,000 small trembles. The air tastes metallic. Or maybe it's fear. I catch my reflection in a wet stone. Pale, tense, swallowed in fog. The light flickers behind me. I want to turn. I want to run. But my feet are rooted, drawn forward. The presence waits, still patient. A shadow stretches along the trail. It flickers with the light, moving in ways the wind does not. I hear something, soft, deliberate, breathing through the leaves. The fog parts, thin and trembling. I see it now, pale, ephemeral, swaying between the trunks. Closer than I thought, yet impossible to touch. I exhale. The mist swallows my breath. The light vanishes. Only the soft, lingering rustle remains. Cold settles into my bones. The mountain exhales around me. I am alone. The path stretches on, empty. I feel it fading, or maybe I am fading from it. Silence hums through the pines. I take a step, then another. The forest swallows me whole, and the flicker waits, just beyond the fog. The forest thins here. Roots curl over the earth like veins, dark and glistening in the pale moonlight. I step carefully, the soil soft and cold beneath my boots. A hum drifts through the ground. At first, I tell myself it's just the wind. It coils around my ankles, rises through the roots. But it doesn't fade. I stop. The hum becomes words. Soft, fragile, almost pleading. I can't place the voice. It is everywhere and nowhere. My hands grip the flashlight until it quivers. The beam sweeps the roots, the trunks, the fog curling between the trees. Shadows lean closer with each breath I take. They twist with the wind, but also without it. The words grow sharper. They thread through the static beneath my feet, through the bark, through the air that tastes like damp earth and decay. A name whispers. My name. I bend closer to the ground to see if the roots hide some secret. But they pulse beneath my touch, like fingers curling around mine, gentle but impossible to pull away from. The forest feels thinner now, smaller, as if the trees themselves are bending toward me, listening. A dry leaf skitters across the soil. Or is it a small step? I can't tell. My heartbeat ticks against my ears. The words rise again, half song, half sigh. I feel them coil around my ribs. I want to speak, but my voice is caught between the roots and the darkness. The fog thickens. Every shadow seems alive. I see one, pale and bending, arching over me just for a moment, then gone. Or maybe it never was. I press on, though the path narrows until my shoulders brush the roots on either side. The earth hums beneath me, warm and breathing. I step over a root, and the hum flinches. A whisper curls up my spine. Come closer. My flashlight flickers. The beam stutters over the roots, over the twisted shapes beneath the mist. The voice is closer now. It speaks in fragments, in rustling syllables I almost understand. Something scratches the soil beside me. I freeze. The hum folds into a sigh. The leaves whisper above, soft, slow, watching. I realize I can feel the words under my skin, not just in my ears. I stumble over a root and land with my hands pressed to the earth. The hum spirals, louder in my chest than in the ground. I press my palms harder, and the soil answers with a cold shiver. It is not wind. It is waiting. The path narrows further. Roots twist like hands, pale in the flashlight's trembling glow. The voice hums in my throat. Every shadow leans closer. Even the fog holds its breath. Then silence. The hum fades beneath my feet. The voice retreats into the soil. Only my ragged breathing remains. I stand, trembling, feeling the roots whispering underground, beneath the fog, beneath the moonlight, alone but not quite. I take another step. The path opens just enough to move forward. But the roots watch and the whispers wait, always waiting. The fog had settled thick and low. It pressed against my skin like damp cloth. The path ahead vanished into nothing. My footsteps softened, swallowed. Each step sank into wet earth, rustling leaves that smelled of rot and rain. At first, I thought it was just shadows, trees bending, branches brushing, a trick of pale light leaking through the mist. Then I saw them, two small, glowing eyes hovering between the trunks, unblinking, waiting. They didn't move, but I felt them follow. Every time I shifted, they shifted. My breath drew shallow, tight against the cold. The fog tasted like wet ash. I blinked once, twice, and there were more, dots of pale light, emerging like stars scattered across black velvet. Eyes, dozens more than I could count. They lingered, patient, silent. Even the wind seemed to hush around them. I tried to look away, to convince myself they were only reflections, smudges in the mist, but my mind recoiled at the feeling of being watched. I stepped forward. The earth squelched beneath my boots. A branch snapped behind me. I froze. Silence. Then a shiver slid down my spine. A breath of something colder than the night air. The eyes remained. Still, patient, unyielding. I whispered to myself, though the words felt swallowed by the fog. "You're not real," I said. The words trembled against my lips. A rustle faint close. I turned sharply. Nothing. Only the fog curling between the trees. Only the glow of hundreds of eyes, tracing my every move. The path that seemed empty, safe, familiar, was gone. It dissolved into the mist, leaving me with the soft press of unseen breaths and the quiet hum of the fog itself. Each step became a gamble. The mud clung to my shoes. The cold sank deeper in the eyes. Oh, the eyes! They followed in clusters, emerging from trunks, from shadows, from the spaces my mind refused to see. I wanted to run, but the fog pulled me slower, until my pulse matched the hesitant rhythm of my feet. A single tree leaned close, its bark rough against my fingertips. I felt something brush past my shoulder. Not wind, not branch. I dared not look. They were everywhere, dotted along the path like constellations, floating low in the fog. I could feel their gaze through the mist, unblinking, silent, and somehow patient, as if they had always been waiting. The panic gnawed softly, settling into my chest like ice. Every breath came thick, fog curling into my mouth and nose. Every sound was too loud, every silence unbearable. I thought I might collapse there, thought I might vanish into the fog, become one with the damp earth and the watching lights. Then I heard it, soft footsteps. Not mine, slow, careful, trailing behind me, yet not closing in. I did not turn. I could not. The eyes flickered. Some vanished, some multiplied. And in that space, between the thick fog and the pale light. I realized the path was never empty. It had never been empty. I kept walking, feet dragging through wet leaves, fog wrapping me in a quiet, suffocating embrace. The eyes stayed. They always stayed. The hallway stretches longer than it should. The pale light from the bare bulb flickers, trembling against the peeling paint. I can hear my own steps, slow and soft, against the cold wooden floor. Something else walks behind me. I feel it first, a shift in the air, light and quick, following the rhythm of my feet. I stop. It stops. I move. It mirrors me. I glance sideways. Just a shadow, lingering at the edge of my vision. It blinks away when I try to look directly. Every time, a breath of damp fur brushes my skin, and something metallic, faint and sharp, drifts into my nose. The kitchen door sighs as the wind nudges it open. I see the faint shimmer of wet fur across the counter. It's not an animal I know. It's too large, too quiet. I hold my breath. The hallway hums with silence. But the floors beneath me tell another story. Soft, deliberate footsteps, always following. I try to convince myself it's my mind. A trick of light, a trick of sound. But the metallic tang grows stronger. I taste it on my tongue without knowing why. The living room is colder than I remember. A stale, heavy scent curls around my ankles. I glance at the sofa. Shadows gather there, like smoke that shouldn't be. They ripple when I move, always moving when I'm not watching. I edge forward. Every step makes the hum of the house thrum in my chest. I feel soft footsteps beside me, brushing too close. I dare not turn. A lamp flickers. For a moment, I see it clearly. A figure crouched at the corner of the room, pale light catching wet, matted fur, eyes glinting metal. Then gone. The bedroom door groans. I squeeze it shut behind me. The footsteps pause. I tell myself it's over, but the metallic scent lingers. It curls in the air like smoke, thick and intimate. I press my back against the wall. I hear it breathe, not human breath. Something slower, heavier, closer. I close my eyes. The shadow waits, always waits. Even when I blink, it's just beyond sight. Every attempt to name it fails. It is only presence, only motion, only the wet, sharp scent. I whisper to myself, though no one can hear. It doesn't answer. It doesn't need to. I take a step toward the door. Soft steps echo behind me. Faster now, impatient, urgent. I try to run. They match me, every heartbeat mirrored. The hall stretches further. The light bends around corners. I feel for a brush against my hand as I pass. Metallic tang bites deeper. I taste it in the back of my throat. The living room is empty, and yet the scent, the footsteps, the small, almost polite pause whenever I stop. I lean against the doorway. I hear my name in a whisper I can't trace. Not spoken, felt, vibrated through the floorboards, curling in the air. I reach the stairs, and I see it just a moment. A crouching silhouette, the edge of wet fur glistening, eyes sharp as a blade. I blink. Gone. The house exhales around me. I listen to silence, but I know it is lying. It is never still, never far. I climb the stairs. I hear behind me. Light, quick, always following. The bedroom door closes. The shadow cannot enter, not entirely. I curl beneath the covers. The metallic scent fades a little. The soft breathing slows. But I know it waits. Just beyond sight. Just beyond touch. The unseen companion never leaves. The forest was quiet that evening. A pale light lingered between the trunks, brushing the path with a thin, silver haze. The air smelled damp, like soil and moss, with a hint of something older, with decaying hidden. I walked slowly, my footsteps muted by the thick carpet of fallen leaves. Branches scraped overhead. Soft whispers in the wind. A rustling off the path made me pause. Nothing. Then I saw it. The tree. Massive. Its limbs stretched wide, gnarled and dark against the dim sky. Its trunk split near the base, hollowed black inside. A shadow deeper than the forest itself. I stopped, drawn closer despite the weight pressing on my chest. From within the hollow, a faint scratching. Claws, or fingernails, scraping against bark. I held my breath. A small face appeared. Pale, almost translucent. Distorted, too thin, too sharp, the eyes impossibly wide. It lingered, watching me with something that felt like hunger, or perhaps fear. Then it vanished. I leaned forward, the bark rough against my palms. But the hollow was empty. No face. No movement. The forest seemed to sigh around me. Air heavier, thick with something unspoken. I questioned myself. Had I imagined it? A flicker of motion at the corner of my eye made me spin. The leaves shivered, but there was nothing, only the soft hum of my own heartbeat, loud in my ears. I stepped closer to the tree again. The hollow seemed to breathe. A faint warmth, almost like a pulse, radiated from its dark mouth. Scratching, faint but persistent, beneath my skin, beneath my sense of calm. I whispered to myself, though no sound left my lips. You're just a tree. Just a tree. But even as I said it, doubt seeped in. A chill brushed my neck, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and something metallic. The shadows shifted inside the hollow. The face returned, closer this time. A nose pressed flat against the bark, eyes reflecting mine. I froze. A twitch of its lips, a curl that felt wrong, unnatural. It blinked once, and disappeared again. I wanted to run, but my feet rooted to the path, locked by a mixture of fear and fascination. The wind rose, branches groaned, and the forest seemed to lean in, listening. I circled the tree, hesitant, touching the trunk with fingertips that trembled. The wood was cold, slick with dew. The hollow's darkness pressed back at me, thick enough to swallow sight and thought alike. And then the scratching grew louder, closer, inside me now, or just behind my ribs. I couldn't tell. I whispered a name that felt familiar, though it wasn't anyone I knew. The forest answered with silence. Then, faint, almost teasing, a soft giggle, high and broken. I stumbled back. Leaves crunched underfoot. The hollow seemed empty again. Yet I could feel it watching, waiting, a presence heavier than the night itself. I wanted to touch it, to see if it was real. My fingers hovered over the opening. And for a heartbeat, a soft pressure, like a hand brushing mine from inside. I recoiled. The forest held its breath. Even the air seemed to tremble. I backed away, eyes fixed on the black mouth of the hollow. And I understood something I couldn't name. Some things aren't meant to be seen. Some things watch from the spaces we cannot enter. The wind carried the leaves down the path. The pale light dimmed. I didn't look back as I walked away, but I could still feel the eyes. And sometimes when the night is quiet, I swear I can hear the scratching faint, far off, and that pale, distorted face watching from the hollow tree, just beyond reach. The mist had a weight tonight, cold, damp, curling around my ankles like fingers. I could barely see the path ahead. Only a pale smear of light through the trees. I noticed them first, tracks, imprinted deep in the mud, humanoid but stretched, too long, too deliberate to be any animal I knew. They twisted, curved back on themselves, looping in impossible shapes. Some vanished mid-step, as if swallowed by the fog. My boots pressed lightly, careful. Yet I felt it, something else mirroring me, not quite behind me, not quite ahead. Just there, the air smelled of wet earth and something older, rot, faint but undeniable. I swallowed, trying to focus on the rhythm of my own breathing, but it felt loud, like a drum against the silence. Every so often, a rustling, a soft, deliberate brushing against leaves. Nothing visible. The mist drank it before I could see. I tried to tell myself it was the wind, but the wind doesn't loop in circles. The wind doesn't step in precise, measured patterns. I followed the tracks. Or maybe they followed me. I couldn't tell. The fog thickened. It moved as though it had weight, pressing closer with every step. I stumbled over a root, and the tracks seemed to hesitate, as if watching me. A smell hit me then. Iron, copper, damp cloth. Blood? I wasn't sure. It made my skin prickle, every hair on my neck raising. I crouched, examining the impressions. Clawed? Not quite. Fingers? Maybe. Long, delicate, impossibly thin. The mud had swallowed them up too cleanly in some spots, as if the earth itself had rejected them. A snap echoed somewhere to my right. My heart thudded too loudly. I froze, breath shallow, tasting mud and cold air. The tracks twisted toward a rise in the terrain. A hill, though in the fog it seemed like a wave frozen in motion. I climbed slowly. The mist grew denser. It stung my skin, settling in my hair, my eyes, even my mouth. I reached the top, and then it stopped. The track stopped. For a long moment, there was only my breathing, the mud squishing beneath my boots, and a hum, soft, vibrating through the soles of my feet. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to see. Something shifted in the corner of my vision, a shadow, pale and bending, folding to the fog like smoke. I blinked. It wasn't there. I stepped forward, drawn by a curiosity I could barely name. The tracks resumed, curling away from the hill, heading into a thicker patch of trees. My own steps were hesitant, heavy. I imagined each one echoing. Felt them echoing, but nothing answered. The air changed, a damp sweetness, like decay softened by rain. The fog clung to me, pressing into my clothes, wrapping around my arms like fingers. I thought I heard footsteps, then silence, then the faintest whisper of movement brushing against the trees. I spun. Nothing. The tracks led me to a clearing. A ring of pale light ghosted through the mist, and in the center, nothing except mud, disturbed, waiting. I crouched again. The prints were smaller here, closer together, tighter, like something had been pacing, watching me. A sudden wind whipped through the clearing. The mist twisted, spiraling into itself, and for a heartbeat I thought I saw eyes, thin, elongated, too far apart to be human. Gone the next moment. I didn't move. I couldn't move. I felt the air shift behind me, a presence pressing into the fog. So near I felt its breath on the back of my neck. Cold, moist, patient, and then the tracks vanished, straight into nothing. I stayed crouched for a long time, listening to my own breathing, the hum beneath the mud, the soft rustle of leaves that belonged to no one. Finally I rose. Step by careful step, I retraced my path. The mist swallowed my footprints. The forest swallowed my voice. And still, I could feel it following, always just beyond the edge of sight, just beyond the fog. I will return. I have to understand what moves and loops, what watches and waits, patient as a mist. For now I walk alone, and the forest exhales around me, soft and endless, holding secrets in the hum of the mud. In the curling, twisted tracks I cannot escape. The forest had stopped, not just the usual quiet after sunset. This was something deeper. No wind stirred the branches. No birds called from the canopy. Only the faint rustle of leaves. And it was deliberate. I froze, letting the fog curl around my ankles. It shifted again. A soft brushing air, like a breath across the nape of my neck. I told myself it was the trees. But the feeling of eyes, that lingered. The path beneath my feet had grown muddy from yesterday's rain. Each step made the wet earth sigh. Yet the leaves above moved without reason. A careful, almost waiting shuffle. I turned slowly. Nothing but gray trunks, pale under the last of the light. And yet, I knew I wasn't alone. The smell of damp wood and decaying leaves thickened. It pressed against my chest, heavy and slow. A single crow had been cawing moments before, but now even its voice was gone. Just the rustle. Over there. Closer. I whispered a name. Even my own voice felt strange, like it didn't belong. The air flickered, too soft for wind, too deliberate for chance. A shadow slid between two oaks, not quite human. I tried to breathe quietly, but my lungs betrayed me, tight and shallow. The leaves shivered again. Soft footsteps, just beyond reach. I wanted to run, but my legs refused. Time slowed, each second stretched, thick and humid. I felt a brush against my sleeve. Cold, almost wet. I flinched. The shadow paused. It was aware of me, watching. A deeper smell arrived, something like soil and smoke, old and bitter. I imagined it moving closer, circling, patient. I could almost hear its thoughts in the silence. A soft, waiting presence. I remembered the stream I had passed hours ago. Its gentle gurgle now seemed like a distant memory. The forest had claimed everything familiar. Only the rustling remained. Slow, deliberate, endless. The fog rose around my ankles, creeping, curling. The shadows stretched into shapes I could not name. I pressed myself against a tree, listening, every hair on my skin alive with attention, every heartbeat echoing in my ears. I tried to take a step. The ground shifted, as though it had weight of its own. A hand, invisible, brushed my shoulder. I stilled. The rustling slowed, almost apologetic. I whispered nothing. Silence answered. The forest held me, small and trembling, and then it moved again, not toward me, not away, but around me, circling. I closed my eyes, counting, breathing, pretending the shadows were only leaves. The rustling faded. The fog thinned. A faint wind stirred, carrying the smell of wet pine. And yet, even as I walked away, I could feel it still, watching, breathing with me. Just beyond sight, the forest remained silent. But I knew better. Something had been there, something that would always be. The forest smelled damp, like wet earth and fading leaves. Fog curled around the trunks, thickening with every step I took. Night had already settled, but the moon only caught pale edges of the branches. I pressed forward. My flashlight trembled in my hand, a weak beam cutting slivers of white through the dark. Every snapped twig sounded like someone breathing just behind me. Then I saw it, a figure, fluid and impossibly thin, moving between the branches. It paused when I paused. I froze. It mimicked the tilt of my head, the shift of my weight, as if it were studying me. A rustle echoed, soft but deliberate, and I imagined it moving closer. The light hit nothing. Shadows gathered where there should have been open space. Leaves whispered. I stepped forward. The figure mirrored me again. A flicker of movement, gone when I blinked. My heart thumped against my ribs, slow and irregular. I want to call out. I didn't. The air smelled colder now, moist with a faint metallic tang of old bark. Every breath I drew felt too loud. It moved sideways, keeping pace, silent on its limbs. The branches above swayed, even though the air was still. A single leaf drifted down. I tilted my flashlight. Nothing. The fog swallowed the beam. And then, from the corner of my vision, a shadow shifted. So like mine, it made my stomach twist. I stopped again. It froze. I wondered if it had ever stopped at all. A soft hum ran through the trees, like wind tangled in roots. I stepped closer. Curiosity clawed at me, sharp and urgent. It mirrored me still. The ground was slick with wet leaves. I slipped. For a heartbeat, it paused too. Then it was gone. I called its name, a whisper. No answer. Just the crunch of my boots on the damp forest floor, and the soft brushing of branches above, or maybe beside me. A fog light appeared between two trunks. I blinked. My flashlight caught it for a moment. A shape so pale it could have been nothing, but it was something. It moved again, slow, deliberate, testing me. I could see it only in fragments. An arm, a leg, the tilt of its head, always mimicking, always just out of reach. A bird cried somewhere. I flinched. The sound seemed to come from all directions. I held the light steady. It was gone, vanished into a gap between branches. I thought I saw its eyes, pale and unmoving, reflecting my own. Then nothing. I moved cautiously, each footstep wet and soft. The fog thickened around me. Every branch seemed to twitch with hidden life. I whispered to myself. I promised myself I would leave, but the path I had taken seemed unfamiliar, twisted. Every tree looked the same. I stopped. It was there again. No more than a shadow, no more than a suggestion. But I knew it knew me. I tried to turn. Branches tangled in my sleeves, the cold damp sticking to my skin. A soft snap behind me made me jump. It did not flee. It lingered, silent, patient, just beyond the weak cone of light. I crouched to inspect the ground. Mud, leaves, nothing but the faint indentation of feet. Too thin to be human. I stared at them. The fog moved over prints, hiding them, reshaping them. I looked up. A branch shifted. A shadow passed through it. I could feel it watching, waiting, always a heartbeat behind. I whispered again, but the words caught in my throat. I wanted to run. I wanted to see the light of the road beyond these trees. But my curiosity pulled tighter than fear, cold and slow, like ice through my veins. The figure moved closer. Or maybe I moved closer. The fog made it impossible to tell. I raised my flashlight one last time. It reflected on a pale surface, smooth and curved, a face, too quick to focus. Then gone. The forest fell silent. No rustle, no hum, no hint of presence. I thought I had imagined it, but then my shadow stretched long across the leaves, and something else stretched beside it, still mirrored, patient. I left the forest before I could see it fully again. But every night since, when I close my eyes, I see it between branches, mimicking me, waiting. The fog drifts low between the trunks. Each tree leans, pale and quiet, as if listening. It's late, but the forest feels awake. I can hear it first. A hum, soft, distant, like a lullaby remembered in sleep. It curls around the roots, folds over the fallen leaves. At first, it seems almost kind, almost familiar. The hum grows sharper, a note that pulls at my chest. I press my palms to it, the vibration crawling beneath my skin. It isn't music, exactly, not for ears, for bones. Something moves in the shadow beyond the birch. I see nothing, only the rustling, quick, deliberate, between trunks. I freeze, inhale damp earth and wet bark. The forest watches, breathes. The hum changes, becomes rhythm like a pulse. Closer. I try to step back. The moss beneath my boots is slick. My feet sink slightly, each heartbeat in sync with that low vibration. I can't tell if I am following it, or if it follows me. Leaves brush against my arm, not from wind. Something is brushing, and still the hum. I feel it coil around my ribs, twist like smoke in a chimney. The light shifts, pale and uneven. Moonlight through fog. It glints off a surface I can't place. Water? Metal? Something wet. I step closer. It recoils, recoiling me in turn. The hum rises, higher now, teasing a note I want in fear to catch. A snap of twig. Soft footsteps. Not mine. Not far. Behind me, I hear the brush of leaves. I turn slowly. Empty trunks. Empty, and yet something waits. The hum throbs again. A lullaby that doesn't comfort. It presses, insistent, as if the forest itself were leaning in. I put my hands over my ears, but the sound travels to my chest, my teeth, my eyes. Every breath I draw tastes of moss, decay, something older, deeper. I try to name it, the thing moving in the shadow. I cannot. It is not solid, not quite air, not quite matter. It is there, always just there, just out of reach. A thin fog curls around my ankles, cold, damp, unrelenting. I step forward. The hum bends, pulls, like a current beneath the ground. I stumble over roots that shouldn't be there. The forest seems to shift beneath me, watching, and then silence, just for a breath, just enough for the absence of hum to scream in my chest. I wait, frozen. The fog drifts past my eyes like pale water. A shadow stretches along the trunk of a pine, long, thin, impossible in the moonlight. It flickers, melts, and reforms. I step closer, drawn, and the hum returns. Soft again, coaxing, tugging at my shoulders, at the pit of my stomach. I shiver, want to run, but feet rooted in moss. I notice the smell, metallic now. Blood? Rust? Or just memory of something I cannot name. The hum vibrates with it. A lullaby of things I have forgotten, never wanted to remember. Something brushes my sleeve. Closer. I hold my breath. Here in my throat, the forest leans closer. The hum coils around my ankles, lifts, flows up my spine. I feel my pulse sink, my chest rise and fall with the sound. I want to look behind me, but I do not. I know if I do, it will be there, watching, waiting, and yet part of me longs for it. The hum softens, fades, recedes into the mist. Leaves rustle once, twice, and the world holds its breath. I stand in damp earth and fog. Alone, though not alone. Not really. Moonlight glints one last time on something wet, pale. The air hums faintly in memory. And then nothing. I move forward, Careful, slow, footsteps swallowed by moss. The forest exhales. And I follow, wondering if I will ever hear that lullaby again. The fog presses close, damp against my skin. Each breath tastes faintly of wet earth and smoke. My flashlight trembles in my grip, weak against the gray. Through the mist, I see it, a pale shape, blurred at the edges. No face, no eyes, only the hint of a head, tilting ever so slightly. It drifts toward me, slower than a walk, deliberate. The air thickens around it, making each step feel heavy. Leaves rustle under something unseen, soft, measured. I try to steady my hands. The beam flickers, skipping over the mist. Shadows coil and stretch, reaching toward me, then withdrawing. It doesn't move like a human. There's a rhythm, a pattern, like it's studying the way I breathe, the way I step. I realize it isn't just coming closer. It's learning me. The cold presses deeper into my bones. A hum rises somewhere in the fog, quiet but insistent. I swallow, tasting iron. My mouth feels dry. I take a hesitant step back. The figure mirrors me, drifting with the same slow inevitability. Leaves crunch. Something slides across the earth, soft, wet. I don't want to look, but I can't turn away. A shadow stretches across the mist, pale as ash. It leans, tilts, and folds into angles my mind shouldn't comprehend. The flashlight flickers again, and for a heartbeat, I see it clearly. Hollow shoulders, elongated limbs, a skin too pale for the night. I breathe in sharply. The fog clings to my hair, my neck, settling in my ears. Every sound I make seems amplified. My own pulse, my own heartbeat, a whisper of footsteps that aren't mine. I step sideways. It follows, mimicking the motion, always just beyond the light. I feel its presence in the air, heavy, cold, patient. It isn't rushing, but I sense anticipation. A branch snaps somewhere to my left. I flinch. My flashlight skitters, catching only its outline, a tilt of the head, and I swear it's grinning, though it has no face. The mist shifts around it like water, wrapping, folding, waiting. I reach for my jacket, hands trembling. The fog presses tighter. Each inhale tastes metallic. The ground beneath me feels wrong, soft, like I might sink. It pauses. I freeze. Time bends. I can feel it measuring, sensing. The rustling stops, leaving only the hum, low and vibrating under my ribs. I step backward again. The figure drifts forward. The mist curls around it, pale and thin, like smoke from a distant fire. I can't tell where it ends or where the fog begins. A shiver crawls down my spine. The air smells damp, mossy, with a faint hint of something decaying, far off. I realize my flashlight is almost dead, its beam a trembling finger pointing into nothing. And then it shifts, a tilt of the shoulders, a soft leaning closer. I feel a brush against my mind, cold and deliberate, and I understand something terrifying. It knows I'm afraid. It knows the sound of my breath. It knows the rhythm of my pulse. I whisper, though no sound escapes me. The fog swirls around my words anyway. It drifts nearer, closer than I thought it could. And then, almost imperceptibly, it pauses. A shadow leans toward me, stretching thin across the mist. The hum fades, leaving silence dense and heavy. My chest aches. My hands shake. I dare glance. The figure is pale, featureless, yet impossibly near. Its presence presses, and yet it waits. I can't move. I can't think. A faint rustling echoes behind me, soft as falling leaves. I breathe, tasting damp fog and cold earth, feeling my pulse in my ears. The figure tilts once more, slowly, deliberately, then drifts back into the mist. The silence hangs. I stand alone, shivering, watching the fog curl and fold. The pale light of my failing flashlight sways, and though it is gone, I feel it, learning, waiting. The morning fog hung low, clinging to the pines. Every branch dripped with cold moisture. The trail ahead was nearly invisible, swallowed by white. I noticed the first marker, half broken. It was splintered and pale. Closer, I saw teeth marks along the edges. Something had gnawed at it. A second marker leaned awkwardly, etched with symbols I didn't recognize. They weren't letters. Not exactly. Curved lines that twisted into one another, almost alive. The fog curled around it, moving like slow smoke, guiding me forward. I wanted to stop. Every instinct screamed to turn back. But my legs moved before my mind could catch up. The soft rustle leaves underfoot sounded too loud in the stillness. A bird stirred, but no bird had wings heavy enough to match that shadow sliding between the trunks. I blinked, and it was gone. Another marker appeared. This one leaned further, almost broken in half. The symbols were sharper, more precise. I traced them with my eyes, feeling them itch at the back of my skull. The fog thickened here. It swirled unnaturally, forming shapes that weren't quite trees, not quite animals. I felt drawn to it, like a thread pulling me along a path I shouldn't follow. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. I stumbled over roots, over moss, my boots sucking at the damp earth. The silence stretched so long that my own breath startled me. It was steady, except for a faint hum beneath it, vibrating through the soles of my feet. I reached a cluster of markers. One lay face down in the mud, as if thrown. Another stood upright, thin as a finger, carved deep with symbols I almost recognized. They weren't human shapes, not exactly, but something about them felt familiar. I tried to look away, but my eyes kept returning. The fog shifted again. It rolled along the ground in thick fingers, brushing against my ankles, my shins. It whispered around the markers, coaxing, circling, forming patterns I couldn't follow. A smell rose, wet wood, something sour beneath it, and a hint of iron. I wanted to leave. I could hear it in the rustling leaves, the crack of twigs behind me, but the trail beckoned, moving with the fog, pulling me forward. I paused. The silence became heavier than the fog. I thought I saw a movement just beyond the marker, a shadow that shouldn't exist. Slow, deliberate, watching, waiting. I swallowed, my tongue thick, tasting the dampness in the air. The trail continued, broken, gnawed, carved, but it made sense to nothing I knew. My feet moved again, almost automatically, tracing the path the markers had made. The air grew colder, sharper, each breath like inhaling glass. The symbols on the markers glimmered faintly in the pale light, or maybe it was my imagination. They shifted when I wasn't looking directly, tilting toward me. They were not welcoming. They were calling. I reached the last marker I could see. It leaned so far it seemed ready to fall. The symbol etched into it was the clearest yet. I couldn't read it, not fully, but I felt its meaning pressing against my chest, filling my lungs with dread. The fog thinned suddenly, revealing a narrow path. It disappeared into more white, more unknown. I stopped. The markers ended, but the trail didn't. I realized I was alone, and yet not. The shadows lingered, stretching from the trees, blending with the fog. The hum beneath my feet pulsed once more. I wanted to turn back, my mind screaming, but something deeper, older, whispered that the path wasn't done with me. I took another step. The air tightened around my throat. The forest exhaled slowly, wet and cold, and the markers, broken and gnawed, seemed to smile in silence. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. Cold air filled my lungs, heavy with the scent of wet earth and pine. Each step sank slightly into the moss, soft yet yielding, like the ground itself inhaled with me. I paused. A rustle, too subtle to belong to the wind, lingered behind a thick trunk. The branches shivered, and I felt the forest exhale. A faint hum threaded through the silence, rising and fading as if the woods breathed along with me. Shadows moved in the corners of my vision. They didn't belong to any tree I could see. Stillness pressed against my skin, making the hair at my neck rise. I told myself it was just the cold, but the breath of the forest, it didn't feel cold. It felt alive. I followed a narrow path, barely worn, where fog pooled low and white. The air clung to my cheeks, damp and heavy. Whispers curled around me, soft at first, brushing against my ear, then sharper. Words. I froze. They weren't my name, not exactly, but something close, something familiar. I wanted to run, but the moss beneath my boots seemed to pulse, rooting me to the soil. I inhaled. The forest inhaled. I exhaled. It exhaled. A branch cracked. Or maybe it was closer, beneath the fog. Something unseen. Saw footsteps match mine, or led me, I couldn't tell which. Every breath I took was mirrored in the shifting silence around me. A pale light flickered between the trunks, brief and wrong, like the forest had tried to imitate the sun. I reached a clearing. Mist curled around broken roots and fallen leaves. The air tasted like iron, sharp on my tongue. And then the whispers grew into a rhythm, almost a chant. I couldn't understand, but I felt their insistence, a pressing weight behind the hush. The shadows gathered at the edges, slow, deliberate. A shape formed, pale and thin, sliding behind the trunks like smoke. It didn't move toward me. It mirrored me, stepping when I stepped, breathing when I breathed. I stopped. It stopped. I swallowed. The silence between breaths stretched, tight as a drum. Fingers of fog wrapped around my ankles, cold and slick. The words returned, softer now, like they were coaxing me into listening closer. I wanted to step back, but the forest had me in its rhythm, and stepping back would break it. Something shifted beneath the leaves, a fleeting shimmer, or maybe my own reflection in the dark wetness of the soil. The whispers bent closer, brushing against my mind, forming fragments I almost understood. Stay, or was it leave? I couldn't tell. I turned. The path behind me had disappeared. Mist and shadow blended into one, swallowing the trail. Cold pressed against my face. I breathed. The forest breathed. And I walked forward anyway. A gust of wind carried the scent of decay and pine resin. Something wet touched my hand, or I imagined it. A faint pulse beneath the soil, like the ground itself was alive, pulsing in rhythm with my heart. I slowed, listening. For the first time, I realized I wasn't alone, not in the sense of footsteps or rustling leaves, but in the way the forest felt sentient, curious, watching, breathing along with me. I stepped deeper and the fog thickened. The whispers softened, almost gentle now, but there was a tension underneath, a waiting, something that could unfold at any moment, or not at all. I knelt, pressing my palm against the moss. It was damp, cool, almost pulsing. And then I heard it clearly. A single word, breathed into my ear, slow, deliberate. I didn't understand it. And yet I did. The forest shifted around me, breath against my skin, shadow against my eyes. I rose, careful not to break the rhythm. I inhaled. It inhaled. I exhaled. It exhaled. And then I walked on. The ridge was quiet. A pale light stretched across the stones, soft and cold. The mist clung to my legs, damp and chilling. I stepped carefully. Each footfall sounded louder than it should, sharp against the hushed world. Somewhere behind me, a rustle, too subtle to locate. Echoes. They came first as faint murmurs, curling around the rocks. At first, I thought it wind. Then the voices shaped themselves, soft and intimate, like someone breathing close. I froze. A word. Just one. Then silence. It felt almost like a warning. My chest tightened, each breath catching on the damp air. I scanned the ridge. Mist rolled over stone, hiding the edges. Shapes formed and vanished in an instant. Pale glimpses of something human, then gone. The fog smelled of wet pine, cold earth, and a faint trace of smoke. Footsteps? Or echoes of someone long gone. They followed me, or perhaps I followed them. I couldn't tell. A shadow flickered at the edge of the mist. I blinked. It wasn't there. Only the ridge, silent again, holding its secrets. The voices returned. Closer now. Whispering fragments I couldn't understand, yet felt deep, pressing into my mind. I shivered, hugging myself, the chill crawling under my skin. The air grew heavier. Every stone seemed to lean in, listening. I reached out, fingers brushing cold rock, damp and unforgiving. Something shifted, saw footsteps, but when I turned, nothing moved. I tried to find a pattern in the echoes. Rationalize. Some lost hikers like me, calling across the mist. But the sounds were too precise, too deliberate. The ridge narrowed. Mist thickened, dampening my footsteps, wrapping me in its breath. A whisper slid past my ear, lighter than air, colder than the ridge itself. I stepped back. The edge of the path disappeared beneath fog, a dark nothing. Shapes emerged again. They lingered at the edges of vision, pale and fleeting. One lingered longer than the others. A figure hunched, still, watching. I blinked. Gone. Silence pressed in. Even the wind held its breath. I could hear my own heartbeat, slow and trembling. The ridge waited, patient. I moved forward. Mist swallowed my steps, each one stretching into eternity. Echoes hum faintly behind me, soft, persistent. Not voices, exactly. More like memory. Old memories pressing on my mind, brushing my ears, leaving traces I couldn't name. I reached the top of the ridge. The world opened below. Fog curling over trees, valleys hidden in gray. I expected answers. Clarity. But there was nothing but mist, shadow, and the lingering hum of echoes. I stood alone, listening. Every shape I glimpsed was gone a moment. I looked directly. Every whisper seemed meant for me, but carried from nowhere. I breathed in. The air was cold, damp, alive with absence. The ridge had its own rhythm, its own memory, and I was just a visitor, quiet and small, in a place that never forgot. I stepped down, careful. The echoes followed, brushing my skin, clinging to my clothes, fading only when I turned a corner or lower my gaze. I didn't look back, but I could still feel them. Close, whispering. The night pressed in, thick and cold. Mist clung to the edges of the path, curling around the roots like smoke. I could smell damp earth, and something sharper beneath it, metallic, faint. The moon hung low, pale and heavy. Shadows stretched and thinned, shifting like slow tides over the forest floor. Every tree seemed to lean closer, its branches bending in quiet, impossible ways that I walked carefully, boots sinking into soft mud. A rustling to my left. I froze. Nothing moved, but the air felt wrong. It smelled of wet leaves, yes, and something else. Faint, iron-like, sticky on the back of my throat. That MY flashlight caught it first in the corner of my vision. A figure, bending in ways that made the bones ache to imagine. Limbs that shouldn't exist, angles that whispered of things I could not name that I held my breath. It didn't move toward me, but it didn't move away either. The fog swallowed its lower half, leaving only sharp lines, too rigid, too deliberate. The forest seemed to hum. Not a tune, not music, just vibration in the air against my skin under my teeth. I could feel it in my chest, heavy, pulsing. I stepped back. My boot slipped, a crack of twig. The figure twisted instantly, impossible, as if bending to the wind itself. Its head tilted. The angle made my stomach lurch. I tried to blink away. Then the shadows around me flickered. They stretched toward me, moving across the ground as if alive. My flashlight caught glimpses of more shapes, pale and wrong. Figures crouching low, peering, leaning from the fog. The hum grew louder, or maybe my own heartbeat had joined it. I could feel it in my fingertips, vibrating along my spine. The mist curled around my ankles now, icy and alive. A soft snapping. Footsteps? Or nothing at all? I couldn't tell. Everything here leaned towards silence, but it pressed in, dense and choking. The figure's angle shifted again. A shoulder stretched, twisted in a way that made me want to look away. I did anyway. Its eyes, or the closest things to eyes, glimmered. Not bright, not direct, just faint, wet glints of reflection. I wanted to run, but the ground had disappeared beneath my certainty. The path I thought I knew was gone, replaced with black shapes, mist pooling at my knees. I whispered to myself, though it was swallowed immediately. The words came back, twisted, soft, almost answering. I stopped speaking. The air around my mouth felt thicker. I could taste it, cold, sharp, metallic. Shadows shifted again. Figures bent further, impossibly low. They leaned toward one another, whispering without voices. Their shapes trembled, stretching into something wider, then compressing like breathing walls. The moon broke behind a cloud. Pale light spilled in ragged streaks. I caught one perfectly impossible angle. A figure balanced on one leg, knee folding the wrong way, arm longer than it should be. It watched. No, it waited. I wanted to take a step forward, to see if solid ground still existed. My feet pressed into nothing familiar. The mist clung, a living weight, curling over the tops of my boots. I heard a soft sigh behind me. Not human, not wind. I dared not turn. It traced the air, brushing against my ear, my neck, teasing my hair. The figures moved slowly, not running, not chasing, just shifting, slow, deliberate, an eternity in each inch. A branch snapped far away. The echo was too close. I shivered, felt shadows flick across my shoulders like cold fingertips. I took another step. The mist swallowed it. My boots disappeared beneath me. The hum settled into my chest, rhythm with my heartbeat, almost familiar, almost comforting. I stopped, breathed. The fog pressed closer, silent now, but heavy. The figures leaned in and the shapes blurred, almost like reflections in disturbed water. Then the moonlight hit the path again, and for a single heartbeat, I could see no figures, only the empty stretch of mud and mist. I exhaled slowly. The hum receded, leaving only the rustling of leaves, shallow and faint. I didn't look back. I didn't move forward either. The shadows lingered, still stretching toward me, still waiting. And I understood, finally, that some paths never really end. The fog was thick tonight. It rolled over the trees like slow, wet cloth. A faint wind tugged at my coat, carrying something sharp. The air tasted metallic. Not strong, not sickening, just there, like copper hiding beneath the damp earth. I paused. A branch scraped the side of my face. Or was it closer? The fog seemed to pulse around me. Every step shrank the world. The path narrowed into a tunnel of gray, pressing against my chest. I could hear it then. Soft, dragging, something brushing past my shoulder. Cold and heavy, brushing the fabric of my sleeve. I spun. Nothing. Only fog. Only the smell, sharper now. I swallowed hard. My tongue felt thick. The metallic taste lingered. Each step echoed against the hush. I tried to count my breaths. 1, 2, but the numbers felt wrong. Shadows moved just at the edge of my vision, twisting with the fog. I blinked, and the shapes dissolved. A gust blew through the trees. It smelled of wet iron, and of something else, faint, almost human. I thought I heard my name, whispered, careful from behind. A laugh, or maybe a sigh. I couldn't tell. The world tightened again. The fog pressed against my face, cold and damp. My hands brushed branches that weren't there before. Soft, wet, unnatural. I stopped moving. The metallic scent was stronger now, thicker. It coated my nose, my tongue, my lungs. I wanted to breathe, but air felt like smoke. A shadow crossed a path. Not far, but far enough that I couldn't see it clearly. It was pale like mist made solid. It brushed my shoulder again. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. When I turned, the fog swallowed it. Gone. Just gone. The silence after was heavier than the brush itself. Even my own breathing sounded wrong. Sharp and hollow, echoing between the trees. I walked, slowly, every step careful, dragging along the soft earth. The metallic smell lingered, wrapping around me, like it wanted me to follow it deeper. I could feel it brushing against my skin. Cold, waiting. A presence that wasn't alive, but not quite absent. The path narrowed even more. The fog became a wall, trembling faintly as if it had lungs. I could hear a hum, low, vibrating beneath the ground. Or was it in my own chest? My fingers traced the trunk of a tree. Wet bark, sharp with moss. The smell, metal blood, something older, coated my skin. I stopped, closed my eyes, tried to make sense of it. A soft pressure nudged my back. I didn't turn. I didn't move. It waited, and then it shifted. The air changed. The metallic scent faded slightly, retreating like a tide. The fog thinned in patches. I exhaled slowly. The world seemed to stretch again, but the path was still narrow. The shadows lingered at the edges, pale and silent. I didn't look back. I didn't run. I just walked, each step quiet, careful, tracing the trembling line between fear and relief. The fog pulsed one last time, a whisper of metal, of breath, of something brushing past. Then it was gone. Only the faint taste remained. cold, sharp, and the soft rhythm of my own footsteps. Echoing into the night, the forest presses in. Cold mist clings to my skin. Wet leaves squelch beneath my boots. I stop. The world exhales. Then, footsteps. They are soft, yet deliberate, matching mine. I take another step. They move. I pause. They pause. The fog curls around tree trunks, around my ankles, swallowing shapes whole. I can feel it pressing against my chest, making each breath shallow, ragged. Branches scrape against one another, but not with the wind. Something else is moving, something following. I try to convince myself. Just animals, foxes, deer. But the rhythm, it mirrors mine, careful, patient, knowing. A dry leaf cracks under my heel. I freeze. The footfalls halt. A hollow silence fills the forest. Then a rustle, not behind me, beside me. I spin. Nothing. Shadows sway in the pale light of moon. They twist unnaturally. The hum of the forest grows, vibrating through the soles of my boots, through the air in my throat. I start walking again, faster. The echoing steps follow. Close. Never wrong. I turn a corner. The forest opens slightly. Fallen leaves glowing silver in moonlight. My chest pounds, my hands shake. The footsteps slow. They wait. I stop. The wind dies. Only the hum remains, deep and mocking. Something brushes the back of my neck. I spin. Again, nothing. A single branch sways, though the air is still. I move, circling an old oak. The footsteps mirror me. Always, never failing. Sometimes, I swear they pause, just long enough to let me think I've lost them. A scent rises. Earth and decay, wet moss and something else, something metallic. It follows me, pushing into my nose like the forest itself is breathing down my throat. I stumble on a root, catch myself against a tree. I hear laughter, soft, ridiculous. Only, there is no mouth, no voice to claim it. The forest seems to lean closer. Shadows stretch and twist. I swear I see shapes, figures just beyond vision, watching. I drop to my knees. The footfalls stop abruptly. Silence. Then the tiniest shuffle. A whisper of movement behind me. I spin. Empty space. A chill crawls along my spine. The forest hums again. Alive. Mocking. I try to run. Branches tear my clothes. Roots claw at my boots. The footfalls return. Faster now. Closer. Laughing with rhythm I cannot escape. I dive into a clearing. Moonlight washes over the wet ground. Nothing. For a moment, I think I'm free. Then, a crack behind me. Snap of a twig. A shadow drifts across the edges of my vision. I can feel it, cold and patient. I don't stop. I can't. The forest swallows sound, yet I hear them perfectly. Every step I take, they are there. I stumble to a fallen log. Sit. Press my hands over my ears. The footsteps pause. Silence. I breathe. 1, 2. Then a soft, dragging sound begins again. Closer. Always closer. The fog rises. Branches sway without wind. And somewhere just behind me, the forest moves in rhythm with me. Always following. Always patient. Always there. The fog lingered low along the ridge. My boots sank into damp moss. Every step sounded softer than it should. The trees stretched tall, black against a silver sky. Branches whispered together. I thought I caught a shape between them. A cold gust made my skin prickle, the kind of chill that seeps beneath layers. I stopped. My breath fell heavy. Then I saw them, dozens of pale eyes, scattered through the treetops, wide, motionless, watching. Each blink was perfect, unhurried, like they were synchronized with some rhythm I couldn't hear. I froze. The air thickened. It pressed against my chest. I felt like I could barely draw a full breath. Shadows pooled around the base of the trunks. A branch snapped above, soft yet deliberate. I flinched. My own heartbeat roared in my ears. The eyes didn't move. They simply hovered in the foliage and blinked. I tried to look away, but my neck betrayed me, twisting upward again. They multiplied. The pale light caught on each iris, glimmering like frost. The silence was dense. not the kind that waits for sound, but a living silence that pressed into my skin. I whispered something to myself. I don't even remember what. It didn't matter. A breeze stirred the branches and the eyes shifted slightly. It was subtle, almost imagined, but my stomach clenched. I realized I wasn't alone on the mountain. I had thought the climb deserted. I had thought I was just walking among trees. Now, I understood the way of their gaze. The forest felt alive, patient, and deliberate. I crouched, trying to shrink. The fog swirled around my legs. A dry rustle ran across the ground, circling me. My own shadow seemed foreign. Every flicker of movement felt exaggerated. The eyes reflected it, as if studying me. Then the wind died. Every leaf hung still, and the blinking stopped. I dared a shallow breath. The forest waited, waiting for something I couldn't name. I slid backward, silent against the moss. Each movement made my skin crawl. I couldn't see the eyes now, but I felt them, layered above, layered within. The ridge ended, fading into a gray haze. I stumbled toward it, each step lighter than the last. But even as I left that section of the forest, a trace lingered in my vision, a pale light, hovering above the treetops, blinking. And I knew the mountain was never truly empty. The forest thinned, though not in the way I expected. The air felt heavier, thicker, like it had weight. Branches curved unnaturally, leaning inward, pointing toward something. A clearing appeared, though calling it that felt wrong. The edges of the trees were jagged, like frozen fingers. Shadows pooled in the center, dark, unsteady. The hum started softly at first. It rose and felt like breathing, warm, almost welcoming. I stepped forward. The ground beneath me was soft, damp, a mix of moss and decay. It seemed to pulse with each careful footfall. The light here was pale, like the moon had forgotten how to shine. Trees bent inward, their bark twisted like veins, reaching toward that central darkness. A smell hung in the air, iron soil, something sweeter, almost rotten. Something crouched there. I couldn't see it clearly. The edges shifted in the dim, like smoke or wet cloth. I wanted to look away. I wanted to run. But I couldn't. The hum grew, steady now, pressing against my chest. I could feel it vibrating through my bones. A rhythm, slow and patient, almost expectant. Leaves rustled behind me, though no wind moved. I turned, half expecting someone. No one, just the forest, heavy with silence between each whispering rustle. The crouched shape moved, ever so slightly. I caught a glint. Eyes? Or something wet reflecting the pale light. The clearing felt alive, as if watching, waiting. My breath hung in the air. Each exhale sounded too loud. Each inhale pulled in more of that strange, sweet rot. I edged closer, drawn by a fascination I didn't want to admit. The ground was soft beneath my hands as I crouched, mimicking the creature. The hum filled my ears completely now, a vibration in my chest. Time lost shape. Moments stretched into something liquid, pulling me inward. Every step seemed both deliberate and wrong, like walking in a dream I couldn't wake from. The shadow shivered, then still. It wasn't moving, not exactly, yet it seemed aware, waiting. A single leaf drifted down, landing near my foot. Its descent was slow, deliberate. The clearing seemed to breathe around it. I felt my fingers brush the damp earth. Cold, slick, alive. The hum was louder, softer, everywhere and nowhere. I wanted to speak, to ask something, anything, but words caught in my throat. The shape shifted again, smaller now, taller, almost human. I blinked, and it was still, and I was still. The clearing held me, tight and silent. A whisper of wind through bent branches, a breath that wasn't mine. And then nothing. I stepped back, slowly. The hum faded, leaving a ringing in my ears. Shadows stretched longer, settling back into the familiar shapes of trees. I didn't turn around. I didn't look back at the center of the clearing, but I felt it there, waiting. The forest swallowed the silence. Leaves rustled softly, and I walked on. The wind carries a scent I can't place. Wet fur, damp earth. It lingers in the hollow of my throat. The trees shiver under a pale light. Branches scrape together like brittle bones. Each step I take sinks softly into the soil, but the path, It isn't behind me anymore. I swear it was there a moment ago. Something brushes my arm. Light, almost gentle, almost curious. I freeze. My skin crawls. Every hair on my neck stands. I feel again a whisper against my sleeve. The fog thickens. It coils around my legs like slow smoke. The world tilts. A shadow moves beneath the mist. Never fully revealed, I try to breathe slowly. Inhale, exhale. The scent grows stronger. Animal damp. Something wrong. But not fear. Not yet. Leaves rustle. Soft footsteps follow, but not mine. Closer. Then stillness. A silence that presses against my ears that I glance sideways. Nothing. Yeah, I know I am watched. I feel a presence in the dark spaces between the trunks. A shape that moves without breaking the fog. The ground dips. Roots twist underfoot. My fingers graze the bark of a tree. It vibrates. A low hum that rises and falls. Almost alive. The path appears again, or maybe it's only imagined. I can't tell. It winds tighter, narrower, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. The air tastes of metal and rain. Something presses close behind me. Wait. I can't turn. I only know it is there. Watching. Learning. I hear a soft exhale. Not mine. A mirrored breath. Shallow, deliberate. It swirls around my ankles, curls in the fog. I try to speak. My lips won't move. The words die before they leave me. A pale light flickers between the trees. Brief. Uncertain. It shows glimpses of movement. Then, elongated, almost human, almost not. I feel its gaze crawling over my shoulder. I step forward. So, does it? Each footfall echoes too long. Each echo carries a scent. The brush, the hum. The fog thickens again, a wet blanket over everything. I reach out. My hand hits nothing but air. A chill runs up my arm. The path curls into a hollow. Darkness pooled at its center. I hear a rustle. Closer than before. It brushes against my ankle. Fingers, maybe? No, too soft. Too alive. I breathe. Slowly. The hum rises. A vibration under my skin. It moves along the bones of my chest, the tips of my fingers. The presence lingers. Close enough to feel its heat, cold uncertainty. It is not cruel, not violent. Yet it waits. A droplet of something, water, perhaps sweat, slides down my neck. I shiver. The fog whispers through the branches, carrying that scent of fur and earth, of decay and life mixed together. I step again. The path twists. The hollow seems endless. And then a pause. A breath behind me. Almost patient. Almost human. I don't turn. I don't need to. The forest exhales with me. The mist curls, and the shadowed shape retreats a fraction. Or maybe it never moved at all. I keep walking. The path is there now, or something like it. I feel its gaze linger even as the distance grows. A presence that does not follow but waits. Always just beyond the fog. The scent fades. The hum quiets. The earth softens beneath my feet. But I know it is near. And I know, in a way I cannot speak, that the forest remembers me. That it will breathe around me again. And next time, I may not be alone. The fog pressed close, heavy and damp. Each breath I took tasted of wet earth and cold air. The trees around me were dark shapes, their branches twitching. A low howl rippled through the mist. Not far, not outside, inside. I felt it coil through my chest, through my ribs. My flashlight flickered, casting a thin cone of pale light. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure, elongated, impossibly tall. It slipped between the trees, silent, stretching toward the edges of vision. I held my breath. The fog thinned and thickened around me, like it was breathing too. Every step I took made the damp leaves sigh beneath my feet. The howl came again, different this time, slower, jagged, uneven. It vibrated in my skull. I pressed my hands against my ears. But it didn't stop. The figure reappeared, just at the corner of the light. I couldn't make out a face. Just long limbs, bending in ways they shouldn't. It moved closer, but the mist swallowed it before I could understand. I wanted to run, but the ground felt wrong beneath me. Soft, almost liquid. The smell of wet metal rose from the earth. sharp and sour. I stepped back, my shoe slipping into the mud, and the howl followed me. Silence fell suddenly, so complete it made my ears ring. Then a rustle, soft, deliberate, shifted through the underbrush. I forced my eyes to the dark. A shadow stretched toward me. It didn't move like a person, more like a shadow that had learned to reach. My heart pounded, but the fog muffled it. Each inhale came as a cold gust, damp and thick. I want to call out. My mouth was dry. Words caught in my throat. Something touched my arm. Just a brush, quick, fleeting, impossible. I swung the flashlight, but the mist laughed it away. The howl returned. Closer, inside, around me. I could feel it beneath my skin, threading between my fingers, curling around my spine. I stumbled forward, branches scratching my face, leaves clinging to my jacket. The figure hovered just beyond the light again, unnaturally long. It tilted, almost curious, almost patient. I blinked. It was gone. The fog shifted, and I thought I heard breathing, not mine. A soft footstep, or maybe two, sliding across the earth without weight. My flashlight faltered, dipping into darkness. For a heartbeat, I saw the world in pale shapes and stretched shadows. And then the howl broke, raw, ragged, echoing as if the fog itself had a throat. I ran, or maybe I floated. The mist clung to my skin, soaking, heavy. Every tree seemed to bend, lean, reach, watch me escape. Then it was quiet again, too quiet. I stopped. My chest rose and fell like waves. The fog whispered against my neck. The pale light of the flashlight caught one last glimpse, elongated, bending, watching. And then it was gone. Only the mist remained. I stood alone listening. The silence hummed. My own heartbeat, suddenly loud, echoing. The howl lingered in memory. Inside me, always inside me. The fog had come early that evening. It swallowed the trees first, then the path beneath my feet. I could barely see the tips of the branches, pale and quivering. The air was wet, clinging to my skin. Every breath tasted like cold metal. A rustle moved behind me, soft, deliberate, almost careful. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind, but my heart knew better. Each pulse echoed, too loud in my ears. It was the only sound I could trust. The fog thickened, pressing in. My hands, numb, grazed the bark of a tree. It felt alive, shivering beneath my touch. I wanted to run. My legs refused. Roots invisible had claimed them. A shadow shifted just beyond the fog. It leaned closer, closer than it should have. I could feel its breath, or maybe it was my own, filling my lungs with icy weight. The rustling grew, circling, always behind, always just out of sight. My ears strained. A whisper, or the fog playing tricks? Either way, it curled around me like smoke, wrapping my thoughts in a quiet panic. Every instinct screamed to flee. Every sense shouted danger. Yet I stood, frozen. The fog smelled of wet stone and decay. Each inhale burned my throat. I could taste fear. Something pressed against the edge of my vision. A pale outline, thin and crooked. I blinked. It lingered, not moving, not breathing, yet somehow alive. I want to call out. Words lodged in my throat, thick as the fog. Only silence answered me, and the rustling, closer now, cold against my neck. I could almost feel its shape. Not human, not entirely. I closed my eyes, hoped if I didn't look it would leave, but the fog had no mercy. It was a cage, a blanket of gray that would not let go. The wind whispered through branches, small and thin, or maybe it was fingers, trailing, brushing, teasing. I could feel it breathing with me, a rhythm I did not recognize. Soft footsteps pressing into the wet ground, circling, waiting. The fog thinned slightly, but only enough to tease my eyes. Shapes danced and dissolved as soon as I tried to focus. I could not tell if I was moving or if it was moving me. My fingers grazed the edge of something solid, cold, hard, rusted metal. A fence? A gravestone? It made no sense here. The rustling paused. And so did I. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, just beyond the veil, I saw a flicker of light. Dim, wavering, A pale glow, fragile against the fog. I wanted to step toward it, wanted to feel solid ground beneath my feet again, but the shadow leaned closer, almost familiar. I could feel its shape against the corner of my mind, watching, patient, waiting for me to move. The fog clung tighter. Cold pressed through my clothes, through my skin. I could not run, could not scream, could not think past the hum of panic. It leaned in, closer than air should allow. And then nothing, only the soft, wet rustle behind me, only the fog, only the quiet. I remained frozen, rooted, and I waited. The forest held its breath. Night draped over the trees, heavy and damp. Fog curled around my ankles, cold and wet. I ran. The path should have ended, but it stretched on endless. Each step pressed into the soft earth. But something pressed behind me, not with a noise, not with a crack of branch or snap of twig. Just presence, silent, unyielding. I could feel it learning me. Every turn I took, every stumble, it knew. The air grew thick. Wet leaves clung to my skin. Branches scraped my arms, leaving pale lines. Footsteps echoed mine. Yet when I paused, they paused. When I darted left, they slid right, anticipating. It was patient, and I was not. A low hum filled the fog. Not music, not voice. A vibration that sank into my chest. My lungs burned from running. My heart thumped against my ribs. I couldn't hear my own breath over the hum that wasn't there, yet filled the night. The trees leaned inward, their trunks twisted, knotted faces staring. Shadows bent along with them, long, impossible shapes crawling across a mist. I stumbled over roots, wet and slick. A metallic scent rose, iron, old and bitter. I swallowed, but the taste stayed in my mouth. The path split. 2 directions, both swallowed by gray. I ran left. It followed. I ran right. It mirrored me. And then silence. Not absence of sound, but absence of everything else. The fog thickened, swallowed the ground, pressed against my ears. I could feel my pulse hammering, could feel the eyes watching, calculating. Closer now, so close I imagined its breath on my neck. I wanted to scream, but my voice betrayed me, quiet, broken, fading into the mist. My legs burned. The world tilted sideways. I tripped. Fallen leaves cushioned nothing. Soft, wet, cold. I lay still, waiting. The hum grew sharper, then softer. A rhythm, one that matched my own. I could not move, could not decide. Then faint rustling, soft footsteps, steps that didn't belong to me. A pause. A shadow stretched across the fog. Not human, yet familiar, almost waiting. The forest shifted again. Branches rose and fell. Fog swallowed shapes. A faint pale light flickered ahead, distant, elusive. I ran toward it. It moved, always moved just out of reach. The hum, the steps, the shadow, they learned me. I ran, and the forest moved with me. The mist clung to my arms like cold fingers. My chest burned, lungs screaming. I reached the clearing. The fog thinned just enough to see. Empty, nothing, but the hum lingered, soft, persistent, as if the world had exhaled me and kept me in its lungs. I stopped. The steps stopped. The forest waited. And I waited too. Breath returned slowly. But the silence was alive, watching, learning, patient. I dared not look behind. I could feel it there, always there, in the fog, in the trees, in the hum beneath my skin. I walked forward, barely touching the ground, each step careful, soft, and the forest whispered with every leaf. Always behind, always silent. The trail ended, or maybe it never existed. Fog clung to the trees, thick and wet. Each breath tasted of damp earth and something older. I took a step. The ground felt soft, unsure beneath my shoes. A shadow flickered, and I turned, but nothing moved. Whispers pressed close. Not words I could understand, just murmurs curling through the fog. Cold fingers of air brushed my neck. I shivered, dizzy, trying to find a path again. Branches leaned closer, bending as though watching. A pale light leaked through the mist, shifting, never steady. My own footsteps seemed too loud, too sharp against a hush. I reached for a tree. Its bark was slick, almost breathing under my palm. Something rustled high above, then silence. I blinked. The forest had rearranged itself. The trees, they were taller, darker, their shapes unfamiliar. A scent rose, iron, wet leaves, something rotten beneath. It made my stomach twist. I thought I saw a movement in the fog, quick and deliberate, but each time I looked, the space was empty. I stumbled forward. The fog swallowed me, and the whispers became closer. I could feel them circling, pressing against my skin. I held my arms out, trying to steady myself. The forest shifted again, paths forming, dissolving, mocking me. A branch snapped. Soft footsteps. Behind. Beside. I couldn't tell. I spun, heart hammering, but only gray mist stared back. My pulse drummed in my ears, filling the silence. I tried to call out. My voice vanished almost as soon as it left me. Only the fog answered. Shadows flickered along the edge of my vision. They were small, then large, then gone. The ground beneath me gave way, and I nearly fell. Cold soil, roots snagging my shoes. I tasted dust and rust and fear. Every sense screamed, I am not alone. Then stillness. No whispers. No rustling. Just the fog. Holding me. Holding everything. I forced myself to walk. Step by slow step. Eyes darting. Hands brushing bark. Fingers trembling. The forest seemed to breathe with me, expanding and contracting, rewriting itself with every step. I caught sight of a shape. Pale. Shimmering. Half in shadow. It was gone before I could focus. My chest ached. My legs shook. The fog thinned. Or maybe I had moved. The trail? Still missing. Nothing but empty gray, stretching, endless. I stopped, breathed. The whispers faded, leaving only a hum beneath the silence. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't. I was already gone. The fog hung low over the clearing. Branches scraped each other, whispering in the pale moonlight. My boots pressed into damp earth, each step slower than the last. I felt before I saw it. A shift in the air, like the world had tilted. Cold seeped into my bones. Then it appeared, tall, impossibly tall. A mass of darkness, taller than any tree I had ever known. It did not move like a creature, yet it moved, somehow, tilting slightly, as if observing me. Its presence pressed against my chest. I wanted to scream. My mouth opened, but nothing came out, just the silence and the shadow and the slow, deliberate pause between heartbeats. The air smelled of damp leaves and decay, though I knew no one had walked here for years. A rustling closer, though there was nothing. Every instinct in me told me to run, but my legs felt rooted, like the soil had grown into them. It leaned forward, not threatening, not rushing, but curious. And in its stillness, I felt the weight of time. Moments stretched into hours, or maybe minutes. I could not tell. I only knew the cold and the tilt of that shape, and the way it seemed to watch my very thoughts. My eyes traced its outline. It had no face, no features I could name, just darkness, dense and shifting, edges blurred, melting into the fog around it. I tried to imagine it smaller, less significant, impossible. It was here, all of it. The clearing seemed to shrink. Branches bent away, or maybe I imagined it. The wind stopped. Even the distant river's hum seemed to vanish. I realized I was utterly alone, and yet not alone at all. My fingers brushed the bark of a nearby tree. Rough, wet. I closed my eyes, hoping it was a dream, but the air still trembled, heavy and patient. The shape tilted again, slower this time, as though considering me, my presence, my breath. A shiver traced my spine. I wanted to look away. I wanted to forget, but I couldn't. I had never felt watched like this before. Not by a person, not by an animal, by something older, something patient. The fog curled around it, softening edges, hiding depth. Yet I felt its size, its weight, pressing down through the mist. My heart beat loud in my ears. I thought of screaming again. The sound caught in my throat. Silence stretched and wrapped around me. Minutes passed, or seconds, or an eternity. I stopped trying to measure time. I stopped moving altogether. I accepted the chill crawling over my skin. The shadow remained, tilting slightly, as if acknowledging my surrender. A presence that did not hate me, did not seek to harm. It simply was. I realized then I might never leave this place. Not out of chains or fear, but because the shape had no name, no form, and no reason for me to escape. It simply existed. And in its quiet, I began to accept it. Breath shallow, hands trembling, I stood still, the fog thickened around my ankles. The mass above did not move away. It did not need to. It waited. I waited. A long moment passed. I stopped wanting to scream. I stopped wishing to run. I could feel it watching, tilting, breathing, and I realized in the dim pale light, I had already become a part of the silence. The shape remained, tall, unyielding, unnameable, and I remained too,